Hey friends, this is Jeremy Tank. I am your branding designer, brand artist, and creative consultant. I am also the owner of Think Tank Creative, and I'm here today. I'm going to share with you a branding showcase. This is a real tight, detailed walkthrough, actually, of our studio process at Think Tank Creative and how we start with a strategic timeline and strategic thought process of imagining the end result we want a brand to be and what we want to build towards. And in this case, this is for the Kraken's Cup, which is a tea garden and eclectic eatery down in Knoxville. And I've really enjoyed working with the owner of this. Her name is Vallie, to build this entire thing because she has such a vision for it. And in the course of this video, I'm actually going to walk through every step of our process, every bit of research that we did, every bit of looking at the competitive field, looking at her customer audience that she wants to target, but also looking at sort of the fun and the playful side of things that we wanted to explore because Vallie is a fun and playful person. So we'll get right into this here. So this is for the Kraken's Cup, and this is the entire logo process. And just so you kind of get an idea of the person that Vallie is, some people are very businessy, and she definitely is, but also she has a taste and a flair for personality. These are actually a couple of photos that I took in a photo shoot with her a few years back. So you can see, she's got some personality. She's got some pizzazz, and that's kind of what she brings to her business, and that's what she brings to everything in her life. So it's a whole bunch of fun, especially to work with her. So the first step in the whole process for us at Think Tank is really going from here to there and back again. And what that means, without being a real obvious Hobbit reference, is that we want to see where you are now. And we want to we want to deeply understand where you want to be in your ideal future. So, for example, where you are now might sound like, hey, we gross about $800,000 at this business. It might sound like we have one location. How about 2 employees, right? That starts to sound familiar. That starts to sound like a nice small business size. And somebody with local partnerships. So what does that look like for the future? What is that transition? Because here's the key. Without knowing that future, you can chase business and growth, but you're not going to go in the right direction. So in this future, we're looking at, for example, let's talk about $5 million gross. Is that I think we were plotting about 5 years out for Kraken's Cup here. So I mean that's a good healthy growth trajectory. They're looking at possibly 3 locations. So moving from 1 to 3, that's huge investments, that's huge growth. That's a great target. And then 15 employees. We were talking about you're going to need managers, you're going to need assistant managers, you're going to need training, you need all of that kind of stuff to take it to the next level and systemize everything you're doing to enable this sort of expansion. And then of course moving from local partnerships to regional partnerships to make sure that everybody has supplies. And Vallie is fantastic about getting partnerships locally and regionally to bring in regional and local foods, stuff that's made really close by, and so it's always fresh. And so this is the here to there part of it. And the next part is back again, right? Because once we imagine the future, we have to do that sort of thing. Now, this is called strategy. When you look at something in the future and you take back to wherever you are and you start plotting out the points, that's strategy. So when we're talking about what we want the brand to be, what we want her business to be in the future, then we pull it back here. That's what we're talking about. We are now in the strategic process. And for that, the first things we're going to do is basically, who else is in the same field as you? Who else is doing that sort of thing? And then once we understand that, we see what they're doing. What is your intention? What do you want to do? How do you want to stand out? How do you want to qualify yourself with words and ideas and thoughts, with attributes that represent yourself? And in that market, what is your positioning? How are you different? It's not just enough to say it. We actually have to take that and put a kind of pin in it so that we know who that is. And just as important, to make this whole thing work, who's the audience? Who are you trying to work with? Because it changes how we attack the future, how we go after all of those steps to figure out who they are. And the last kind of part of this, or the second to last part of this, is translation. Because once we know what we want to get to the ideal future and the intention behind it, the attributes, the attributes are sort of like the values, how you want to get there, how you feel about stuff, and we understand the positioning, the audience, we have to translate all those things and synthesize that information into one solution, right? And that involves imagination. Whenever you're coming up with something new, you are being creative. And that's why I say I'm a creative consultant, because I help people come up with ideas that are new, that haven't been done before. And that's what stands out, the new, the interesting, the fun, the exciting. Next step in this process for Think Tank Creative is the identity part. So once we understand kind of where you want to go and we start imagining it, we got a 30,000 foot view of this whole thing, then we start building out identity. And that starts with a logo. And this project is really all about the logo, but I'm going to go ahead and fill out the rest of this map for you so you can see where this goes next. Because after the logo would be a brand guide. That's the full brand identity that says, okay, not only is this the logo, here's how we use it in all these different applications. Here's a bunch of textures and patterns and all these pieces so it can be used consistently. Remember, she's trying to grow to 3 locations. So we need to have consistency across locations, consistency across talking to people so that the brand becomes recognized and loved over time, right? And that requires consistency, and a brand guide helps build that. And then the brand guide is really detailing the brand system. So really those two go together, right? The brand system is what says, use this logo in one location versus this other logo in another location, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How to use all the pieces that we create. Next is the part that marketing loves and the part that advertising agencies love, because that's the tactics. That's actually the fun stuff where you get to take some of this research and take the direction and take the different pieces, and you get to be really creative with it. You build out the website, you build out social media, you build out templates for everything, right? Ads, emails, flyers, postcards, templates for everything. Maybe you get to do some video, which I think is super important these days. I'm making a lot of video myself, and I'm telling all of my clients, look, if you're not doing video, you're kind of missing out, because that's where the interest is. And of course, blogs. If you're writing blogs, this is where that would go. And we're now kind of talking about new media in here as well, because a lot of people are interested in augmented reality, virtual reality, sort of these new ideas of new media and how to take advantage of them. And that falls under that, all of that kind of stuff, right? Now, as you can see, there's some space between strategy, identity, tactics, and the ideal future. And that's because when we get done with the tactics, we really need to have one more point. And where that point is and how it kind of falls on the timeline is really up to the clients and up to what they can afford and what we talk about and what seems right for them, right? There's no one size fits all for this stuff. Really, when we are doing this kind of work, every client is different, every need is different, and it's important that we understand that and respect that. And I'm going to go ahead and call this step double tap. If you've seen that Zombieland movie, the double tap is, you hit them again so that they don't get up. Well, that's what this is exactly. It is checking to make sure the right audience is participating. It's making sure that what we're doing is making sense and connecting. And if it's not, making the small shifts, making the adjustments, making pivots or whatever is necessary to make sure that we do start talking to them. So that is the timeline of a think tank creative engagement. That's how we start from the now and we move into the ideal future. That's how we start with strategy from the ideal future. This is essentially our game plan whenever we attack a project. So right off the bat, once we kind of jump into that strategic process, you can pretty much assume at this point that we've already done a strategy sprint, which is true. In this case, Vallie and I did one over Zoom, and it was actually we did two of them, 4 hours a piece to complete the think tank master strategy framework. So we just sat on either side of a Zoom call and had coffee and talked and made our way through it. Is very productive that way. But the next step is we have to understand what are the other influences in the area, right? Who are the competitors? Who else is top of mind? Because we're talking about tea, and we need to know who else is doing this sort of thing. And one of the things that Vallie said is that not a lot of people are doing tea, but there are a couple of big players there to do that, and one of them is, of course, Starbucks, and they are super professional and super on top of it, but they're not the same sort of service that Vallie offers. So she felt like this, while they are a competitor and they are top of mind, it's not for tea service. It's not for sitting down like old-fashioned tea service or Japanese tea service or Chinese tea service. So it's a whole different beast. Another one is the Time Warp Tea Room, who claims to be a tea room, but is much more of like a biker bar that doesn't really serve alcohol. Um, really much more coffee obsessed than tea. So that's cool. That kind of takes them a little bit out of the running. We have Lulu's, which is a actual tea room, which is in this old house and serves lunch plates and sides and tea, and they're kind of cute. It's very kitschy to me, which is not bad. They really, apparently they've got a great setup, and Vallie says she goes there every now and again, but they're still like an hour to an hour and a half away from her, so that is not direct competition, but it's good to see what they're doing so we know what we're up against. There's also the Apple Cake Tea Room, which they don't really have a website, but they did have a Google listing, which is what I pulled up here and captured. And it's much more of a sit down and eatery dinery, which cool. Again, not super competitive. They're also about an hour away, so we're looking good there. And then we have the Jackson Avenue Tea Company. Now, the Jackson Avenue Tea Company sells loose leaf teas. And while Vallie might do a little bit of that, that is not her prime focus, but it's really good to see that these guys have a modern website. They're doing whole leaf tea. They do tastings, but they aren't like sit down, have little tasty sandwiches that go with it, that sort of thing. So, even though they're in town, it's something different. So I'm liking what I'm seeing because it seems like there is a space for the Kraken's Cup to kind of slip in and provide a service here. And then we also kind of compare all of the social media and see what everybody's doing there, what kind of images they're showing, what kind of pictures do they broadcast, what do they actually say to people, are they offering things online. We just want to understand the market we're heading into as we start to create and think about this. TripAdvisor is a big source of leads for them, so this is one of the things I wanted to pull up and make sure I saw who is actively putting pictures on there, who is actively sharing what they're doing. Again, Time Warp Tea Room, a little bit behind, so okay. And then of course there's other avenues that people find stuff, like Visit Knoxville and Groupon and LinkedIn, Open Table, Yelp, Foursquare, and we kind of looked at all of these and saw, okay, what are they actually doing? Where can we compete with them? Where can we get away with something really unique and fun? One of the first exercises we do in the Master Strategy Framework is the brand archetype exercise. And we do it actually both for the customer or the intended customer, ideal customer, the hopeful customer, the one we want to appeal to, as well as for the business. And in this case, I'm just going to share with you guys the one for the business because that's the most fun because, boom, entertainer. Vallie said that the Kraken's Cup really wants to be an entertainer. They want to connect. They want to entertain. They want to have old-timey music and kind of cool stuff going on, with secondary being the muse, so they want to inspire people, and tertiary being the servant, which, of course, for a tea shop and an eatery, that makes some sense, right? So the entertainer, the goal to have a great time and lighten up the world, to entertain people, to get others to enjoy life to the fullest. I think that's great. Strategy, play, make jokes, be funny, humor, have fun. Okay, that is great because that gives me a direction that definitely aligns with the type of work I like to do and the type of work I like to bring into Think Tank Creative. I love fun work. I love catchy work. I love humor because it really captures attention, right? And the fear of this archetype is being bored or boring others. So we don't want to do that. That's what we want to stay away from. So this is already sounding like a really fun project to me. Some of the brands that do uh, the entertainer are Doritos, Geico, and Priceline. That's the Priceline negotiator that was William Shatner when they were running that kind of crazy campaign. It was so much fun. Uh, and then characters. Chandler from Friends, Nicki Minaj is a character. Robin Williams was. God, I miss him. Jimmy Fallon, love him. He's just awesome. Real kind of guys that stand up and people that get you engaged, that make you laugh, that sort of thing. It's just that's what we're trying to go for with the archetype. So the brand voice, enthusiastic, expressive, self-deprecating, just a bit, right? Because that it pulls people in, it makes them like you more. Okay, I get that. Tells jokes. Yep. Customers feel playful. I love life. Giddy, energetic, entertained, amused. Okay, I can see we're starting to build an idea here of what this looks like. We're starting to see what the Kraken's Cup might be. Um, so the next thing we do with the master strategy framework is called the axis of perception, and I love the axis of perception. It really kind of takes uh, divergent poles. Now they're not exactly opposite, but they're certainly divergent. You can go one way or the other. And I'll kind of pull it up here. Hold on. Boop, there we go. And what I'm talking about here, like masculine, feminine, classic, modern, approachable or authoritative, fun or serious, sporty or elegant, simple or intricate, conservative or extravagant, necessity or luxury, professional or casual, extreme or safe. So what we do is we go through and we put dots on each one of these. And with Vallie, she said, okay, well, choose right about here and right about there. So what we did, boom, not exactly masculine, a little bit more to the feminine side for Kraken's Cup. Okay, we can do that. Very classic, extremely approachable. Remember, we're still trying to picture this in terms of the entertainer archetype. Not serious, not fun, but somewhere in the middle. So okay, it's an added challenge. Whenever you have something in the middle, it's an added challenge. Extremes give you opportunity to play off of each other, so that's something you can do. A little more elegant than sporty, sure, a tea shop, that makes sense if I were going for tea service. Simple or intricate, right in the middle. Conservative or extravagant, a little more extravagant. So she wants to be able to charge a fair amount of money for a couple-hour tea service. And she honestly said, probably around this point in the strategy process, that she wants to create something like Disney World, where you sit down for a tea service and people are serving you and they're constantly there and helping, and it's just a magical experience. So that is certainly more extravagant. Necessity or luxury? Well, not everybody needs tea service, so we kind of agreed that this is more of a luxury thing, especially for the price point that she wants to push with it. And let's see, professional or casual, a little bit more professional. The shop that she is is downtown, as I understand it, and there are more professionals downtown, and there's a potential for bringing in business people during the lunch hour, where she's trying to set aside an area specifically for them to have that, and so it has to be a little bit more professional to be able to entertain them and get it to work. And then extreme or safe, a little bit more to the safe side. Now, one of the next things we do here is we look at it and go, okay, like I said, something down the middle is too bland, right? You have to play it too safe. So what we're looking for are things at the extremes that we can use for positioning. So we're going to go ahead and use classic and approachable here, classic, approachable, and we probably could use safe a little bit, but why be safe, right? If we're going to do something, we have to stand out. We have to be a little bit adventurous. And for what she's trying to do, I kind of think that luxury is a better angle. So a classic, approachable luxury maybe. And then we can take that and go over to the brand positioning and say, okay, if we take those axes, and in this case we're going to take the approachable and the authoritative and the necessity or the luxury, and I'm going to plot all of the other competition that we saw along those axes. So you're looking at top, bottom, left, right, and depending on what quadrant they're in, one would be authoritative luxury, one would be a necessary authority. You just kind of combine the top words and say, okay, is it this? So we're looking for approachable luxury, and the Kraken's Cup is more to the top of that. Jackson Avenue Tea Company is a luxury, but they are very authoritative. They want to teach you about the loose leaf teas. They want to teach you about brewing times. Whereas Kraken's Cup, you're coming in, you're sitting down, you're enjoying the experience. You are being catered to. So they have nobody really in that area, which is great. The next exercise we do is the brand attributes exercise. And in brand attributes, we're trying to, I've got a couple different videos of this up on YouTube, and we're trying to figure out the culture and the voice and the feelings and of what the brand should be, not Vallie herself, but the brand. So what we came up with was the culture is one of wonder. So that we want to create an atmosphere with this entertainer archetype where the culture inside the company that the people are pulled in by and that they walk away with is one of wonder. That really is a Disney-esque kind of experience, right? That's something that you really have to engage them on all senses to kind of get the sense of wonder out of it. The next one's the customers, and the customers we want to be adventurous. So we want them to be intrigued. We want them to be entertained. We want them to kind of walk in and be taken away and want to experience every piece of the Kraken's Cup that we can offer. Next is the feelings. And the feelings we want them to walk away with. We really want them to have a yearning to return. We want to impress them so much with the entertainment factor and the adventure of being in this space and tasting the teas. It almost is like the tea and the little sandwiches become secondary to the full experience and the senses that they're going to have to get a yearning to return. You're going to have to overwhelm them. And Vallie and I talked about this a lot. You're going to have to show them a lot. You're going to have to overwhelm their senses with sights and sounds and smells and flavors to get them to the point of needing to return so that they can replicate all those sensations and really start to take in what those mean, right? For the voice of the brand, this was funny. Vallie said she wants to have the voice of Danny Kaye. And I love Danny Kaye. I've got a couple of actually record album vinyl of songs of his that my wife brought into our marriage, and I've listened to those a couple times, and he's just humorous and fun. And I ended up trying to find a bunch of different ways to describe who Danny Kaye is, and ultimately we came down to charming. The people who knew him, the people who were around him, the people who spoke of him, who wrote about him in articles and interviews, just described him as very charming, and on screen, he certainly comes off as charming, and his music and the tenor of his voice, his tempo, his speed, everything about him just has this charming factor. So that's kind of what we want to display, is this charm as we speak about things. And last is the impact. How do we want to leave customers impacted? And the thing is that we are anchoring this in the taste experience. Vallie is bringing in teas from all over the world in all these specialty flavors and all these different ways to prepare them to go with the sandwiches that are these super high quality sandwiches that she's sourcing locally. And it's a taste experience. So everything anchors on the taste, but everything else around it is adventurous and wondrous and charming and just overwhelming and brings you into it and sucks you in this sort of, Disney-esque kind of adventure. So what we did is we sat down and wrote a positioning statement based on these attributes and based on what we talked about previously in the positioning and based on the competition and the market. And here's what we came up with. The Kraken's Cup invites you to sit for a welcoming taste experience. Remember, we anchor on the taste experience. They're coming in for the food and the drink. We offer a respite from the adventures of life. So we know that people are having adventures. We know what they're doing, but we were saying, hey, come on in. We know you're adventurous people because that's just life. Come on in from that. A place of wonder, culture, and civility. So someplace to come in and escape and experience, the world's kind of crazy. So come on in and experience some culture, because tea, the way we talked about it, has this old-timey, like British tea time kind of feel, right? So a place of wonder, culture, and civility, served with tea and tiny sandwiches, because Vallie absolutely loves her tiny sandwiches. With entertaining charm, we steal you away from the world you know, to slow down and feel catered to, cared for, and transported. So already we're trying to build this picture of a place and an experience where you are away from the world, where you walk into something different and you feel not part of that. It's just a total escape, right? So the next step of this is to come up with an audience avatar or an ideal customer avatar or a growth person if you already have a market. It's somebody that you want to grow to reach into. And in this case, we ended up coming up with this woman, Linda, 50. She's sort of an empty nest socialite. That's how we classify her. And, you know, she's a little bit lost. She has a wonderful family, wonderful home, but she's sort of looking for things to keep her busy and a place to go. And Vallie said, there's these women that are in town. The business people are in downtown. They're doing things. Where she is also has a lot of college kids, so they'll probably come in. But what she wants to do is appeal to somebody like this, who's a networker, who connects other people, who wants to go someplace quiet and thoughtful and concentrate and work and connect, like these red hat ladies connecting there. But also, they've probably heard about high tea. It's very European. It's very chic, and it's something that they want to do and experience, right? So now that we sort of have an idea who the audience is, we at Think Tank do a thing called empathy boards. And empathy boards allow us to sort of gather pictures and ideas and influences that the avatar might see, they might experience, they might feel, they might taste, they might hear in their everyday lives. And by doing that, we sort of get an idea roughly that we can, honestly, we try to empathize with what they see and what they feel. Because if we understand what's in their life, then we can start to reverse engineer some of those references and some of those thoughts and some of those designs and ideas, and use those as we build the logo and build the branding. So in this case, we just pulled a bunch of different pictures, and all of these are verified with our client. In this case, with Vallie, all these are verified where they're saying, "Hey, we understand what we talked about with Linda, and do you think this would be things that she would see in her life or have in her life, or things that she would experience? Is this maybe, is this maybe what her house looks like? Is this maybe what her living room looks like? Is she the one that might have a dog or goes out with some friends? Is she dancing with her husband in the kitchen? And, is she gardening sometimes? Is she trying to join that red hat club? So we're trying to actually see what she might do in life, how we could attract her and talk with her and get her to come into the Kraken's Cup. So that's what empathy boards are. Next, we did some mood boards. And mood boards for us, and I'll go ahead and click over here so you can see, these are 3 different mood boards. And some agencies do mood boards where they just throw a whole bunch of pictures together and they go, okay, well, this is the inspiration for something. And that's not exactly how we do mood boards. Mood boards at Think Tank are looking at the world and seeing opportunities and trends and things that fit together to create an image of what could be built. So in this first one, we're looking at down the center of each of these are colors that kind of tie in with whatever we're seeing. And in this first one, we're seeing a lot of dark wood because Vallie said at one point that she was thinking about sort of steampunk Victorian architecture and styles. And she even mentioned the movie League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And she said they have a library in there, and it's dark wood all around, and that she would love something like that when people enter, they have that so that the lunchtime crowd could just go over there and eat while the rest of the people go into the tea garden, right? So what we're seeing on this first mood board is sort of a bunch of different styles pulled together. It creates a cohesive whole, but there's not a lot of customized stuff. It's a lot of just buying and placing things together, okay? And this is pretty much what anybody could do if they have, some investment funds and they buy 10 tablecloths of one type and 10 tablecloths of another type and a few tea sets of one type with one image and a few tea sets of another type. It creates this very interesting, crafty kind of feel, but when you pull it together within a brand, it still feels unified and cohesive. The middle one here is more about really focusing and intentionally purchasing the pieces and the parts that build the brand. So creating architecture in your space that reinforce what you're trying to think of, and adding small elements like an octopus on a hat, or a decoration, or little cubbies where people can sit in an office that are decorated specifically for that, or even having your employees wear patterned suits and ties and things like that. So it's a little bit more intentional. It's where you buy enough to go across the board. And the last one here is very much the Disney-esque approach. And if you've looked at Disneyland or Disney World, any of those places, you often see like the little repeating Mickey symbol. Well, that's kind of how I classify this last one, because it is very intentionally applying the octopus, the kraken, in as many different places subtly as possible. Even the patterns on the wall, which is that blue pattern down by the record player, have a subtle reinforcement of the idea of the octopus, of the kraken. And everything is very structured, intentionally built specifically to subtly reinforce that feel. So here we have a scale of sort of a starting business where they're collecting all the different pieces, towards where they're being more intentional with what they're doing, and going all the way to specifically ordering plates and ties and setting tile in the restrooms that reflect the brand, right? And in this case, where Vallie is with her business, she's on the first one still, which is totally cool. As we kind of build the brand and as she starts to expand and do the different locations, our hope is that she can move into this second mood board, where a lot more of the choices she makes can be intentional as she grows, and then ultimately end up in the third space, where she can have those really subtle, nice, charming things that people catch up on, because that's what brings them back time and again, right? When you get through the experience and you have a fantastic experience, you come back again. If you see new things each time, that creates such surprise and excitement, and that's a treat. And that's really ultimately where we want to see her over time. So additionally to creating the logo for her, Vallie had some requirements. And there's nothing quite like some extra parameters, right? And I know plenty of designers that probably wouldn't have taken this challenge because of these parameters. So the first parameter, it has to have an octopus in or with a teacup. Wow, already the entertainer, the approachable luxury, and you want an octopus in or with a teacup, and already my brain is going, wow, how are you going to do that? That's going to be so complex as a logo. That's a real challenge. The next challenge is it needed to have a top hat, because it needed to have a top hat. And then, maybe steampunky. And I learned all of this is sort of based around this Kraken character that Vallie had created at one point in time, and she's been trying to bring it into the logo, into this whole concept for her business for quite a while. And she even had some other people try and make her a logo, and there we go. There's the sculpture that she made, and she's like, I'd love something like this, and she had another guy try to draw it, and the drawing just didn't turn out right. And as you can see, if that thing got really small, like on social media sort of size, it's going to be really illegible. Like it would just disappear, fill in, and it's so scratchy. And she said, it just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't seem like the right logo. And I said, yeah, I can see why. It's not a great logo from a design standpoint. The balance is a little bit off. It doesn't read cleanly. It has a lot of different ideas going on, so that's a tricky one. And then the next thing she said is, and by the way, I've got my colors. And Vallie, if you hear this, I adore you, but when I got these, I thought, that can't be right. That really can't be right. And I went out to the store and I picked up the colors from Lowe's, and I'm glad I did, because I think the color of wherever she was with her camera distorted the actual colors when I got it. And it's real important if you're going to say things to a design studio, design company, anybody who's an artist, it's really important that if you show them colors, that you guys make sure you're understanding the same colors. And in this case, I went and found these and kind of confirmed, hey, this is what they look like from my side. Are we right on target? And these are truer than the original image. So that's good. Let's start there. So the next part is where we get to imagine now. We understand the competition. We understand what we're trying to build, the affordable luxury idea, the classic luxury, the idea of being an entertainer, of being charming, of having an experience that's Disney-esque and immersive and has something that pulls people back but is based in the taste experience and the tiny sandwiches. So next came brandscapes. These are also known by some studios as stylescapes. Some people call them mood boards. But as I said before, our mood boards are different. These are brandscapes to us, and a brandscape is really your brand from the 30,000-foot view. It's sort of the feeling, the energy, the cohesiveness of how things fit together, so that you can see and determine before we ever start designing stuff with you. And I say with you in intention, and you'll see why shortly, because if we get the brandscape wrong, then we're going to carry everything else after that down in the wrong direction. So this, the mood board and the empathy board and the avatars and the strategy are all really small steps where you have a say in where the brand is going. And the brandscapes, I think Vallie loved this part because it gave her a chance to see at a very early stage and engage and say, yes, this is right, or no, that is not right. So the first one is a brandscape designed by Rachel Nichols, who's with Lucere Design in Tacoma, Washington. She is an associate of mine, and we talked about this project, and she got so enthused and so excited about it that she's like, look, I want to do one of these. I want to do one. I want you to show it to her and see what she thinks. So the approach that Rachel took, and by the way, Rachel is fantastic. She does similar work as us at Think Tank, and she's just down in Tacoma, and super smart woman, and I really highly recommend her for that work if you're down in that area. And she often helps women-led businesses in the fashion and sustainability sort of industries. So that's her solid niche. And she designed a modern approachable luxury tea room. So for her, the way she saw Kraken's cup was very beautiful. And it is beautiful. And she designed this beautiful little Kraken's Cup KC that is an octopus on its side. And she said, wouldn't it be great if they could put this little mark across the tea sets and across everything that they've got, and wouldn't it look beautiful on top of the menus? And I totally agree. And when she was imagining who the idea of Linda might be, that ideal avatar, this is kind of how she saw Linda, a little bit more, I love that big old heavy necklace, it's so cool. And, that's kind of how she saw her, and this feels like a very active, lively, energetic woman who is definitely a networker, who is definitely getting out and meeting people. And don't miss the little Kraken's Cup tea tin up in the upper left-hand corner. I love the idea of the spoon and that little Kraken's Cup symbol. Rachel did a great job on this. I love it. And then the idea of, that League of Extraordinary Gentlemen coming in and having like a little library where people can sit, and the colors, and she wrote a little story here that goes with it. It's just fantastic. And she came up with this whole idea, and it really has a beautiful cohesive feel. It looks dynamic and modern, and just it's a great job. So that is the modern approachable luxury and tea shop. And thank you, Rachel, so much for doing that. And I know Vallie really liked a lot of the ideas here. So the next one, the concept 2, is the one that I created, is the classic approachable luxury and tea garden. And for this, I was inspired a lot by the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen because, hey, I guess I just needed a chance to go back and watch a movie for research, right? So I did. I went back and I approached that as research, and I said, how do we tell the story and the whole reason the place is called Kraken's Cup? Because Vallie has her reasons. But if we're trying to create that atmosphere of adventure and that atmosphere of luxury and have this experience where people step into a whole different world, we kind of have to have something that prompts that, right? And it doesn't have to be absolutely real. We can absolutely make up a story that justifies all of that, because that builds the experience, sort of like a Disney park. If you make up a story that describes everything and ties it together, then it's a super powerful idea. So I started with this is my idea of Linda in this area, and my story starts out where you walk into basically the side of what looks like a brick building, and a person stands there and says, have you heard of the HMS Heracles? And you can walk in and see this beautiful Victorian sort of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen again kind of library where you can sit and have lunch there, and there's windows that go out into what looks like a garden on the side. And if you want to hear of the story of the Heracles, then the person who greets you can actually bring you in and start to tell you about the story. And I wrote a cute little story here to talk about it and to talk about why the Kraken's Cup is named that. And it ends up being about the whole idea of a woman who was on a ship back from Shanghai and carrying tea back to London, and a giant octopus attacks, and she survived, and it's she wanted a place of civility and culture, so this is what she started when she got back. And I really was just trying to build that charm and that wonder, the idea of adventure and the experience, the atmosphere behind everything. So the idea is, as you walk in, and if you're going for just the lunchtime meal, then you kind of go into those dark study and the leather and the smell and the books and all of that kind of cool stuff. And if you're going for the tea service, that you walk in and down a passageway, and you're led into this indoor garden that Vallie is building, and it's a tea garden. So there's plants everywhere and flowers everywhere, and you come in, and as you kind of turn, you see the side of a house, and it looks like this house right here on the right that is an old Victorian house. So it feels like you've just entered through reality into the inside of the house where some people are eating, and then when they're looking out windows that look out onto this garden. And as you turn from entering the garden, you see parts of the house. So it feels like you just walked through the house into the garden, and you are transported into a completely different world. And the concept here, you saw the pictures of Vallie earlier in this presentation. The idea is that she is related to Miss Nancy. And the idea is that, this is the generational thing, the family thing, and they've grown and expanded these tea shops, and it has a very Victorian feel, but still a very modern feel and a classical feel, because this is the legacy of civility and culture that keeps going forward. And it's a family history worth sharing and telling, and just, and this is a great opportunity for Vallie, who I know loves to travel, to pick up knickknacks and little trinkets and cool things and put them on shelves and add to this ever-growing experience of this place. So this is the entire landscape altogether, and you can kind of see it's laid out as the journey. As you walk in, you start walking through, and then you hear the story, and then you walk into the garden, and you're experiencing all of these textures and feelings and all these different ideas. And then the idea I had for the logo is the idea, kind of like the old tavern signs and pub signs and some of these other things, something of a dynamic illustration of a character, since she really wanted that octopus in there, interacting within a shape somehow with some interesting classic typography or decorative typography or something that kind of tied it all together and played with it, right? So that was the direction she wants to go. That was what she wanted. She says that is definitely what she's trying to build. I was on the right path. I heard the right things, and I am reflecting back that this is the correct path. So next we began the design process. And the design process, for some people, and for a lot of designers, is just sort of, they do a bunch of sketches and come together and say, here it is, choose one, right? You get 3 choices. Because I knew that this needed to be an illustrative logo, I started a little differently, and I started with the idea of, okay, we have 3 base shapes, a circle, an ellipse, and a rectangle, and which one of those, this goes out to Vallie, which one of those feels best for you for this idea? And she chose the circle, and I said, okay, now, if we're going to do typography with it, how would you like that to fit? And imagine the big long squares, the Kraken, or the word the Kraken, and underneath that is cup. And we're going to split them up because I think it's going to be a little easier to read and to place the elements around, and which one of these will be best. She said, okay, let's go with C. So we do that, and I said, okay, now, here's the challenge. I don't want to put an octopus in the center, and I certainly don't want to put him inside of a teacup, and I certainly don't want to have him holding a teacup because you're not going to see the teacup when the logo is small, and if he's in the teacup, you're not really going to see him. What if we extracted the octopus from this and he became not the logo, but part of a logo that is there, but also a character that can float in and out. So maybe at each location you have him as a character in the logos, and maybe when the logo is shown other places, he's not in it because he's at the location. So here's an idea, because I started to look at like Chuck E. Cheese and KFC and Wendy's, and thinking, those logos over time have gotten simpler, they've gotten more modern, they get a little bit distorted, they don't exactly feel like the same sorts of people as they were to start with. And the more we can kind of create a logo that stands on its own, the more I feel better about what we can create and how long it will last. And the longevity of the logo is very important to me. So in this case, we're going to extract him and put him nearby so that we can still use him. We can still build the whole logo with the character and utilize it, but we can also find a way to drop him out. And so that became the concept that drove where we went with it. And in this case, we went ahead and went with A. And so from A, I said, okay, here's where the head would be. How would we work some type around this? How would we play with this? And we came up with this. Put a nice little saucer in the center with a teacup. And this is just super rough to get approval and making sure that we're on the right path and things start to balance right, that we have a good feel for everything, that we have enough legs in there. We're talking 8 here, right? Octopus, kraken, octopus. So we have to make sure they're right. And, we know we have to have some legs supporting the saucer or the plate. We know we have to have some arms coming around the cup to hold it, and maybe some interplay of the type and everything going on. And this is just kind of placeholder type, exploring what feels good. I know that it needs to be a little bit decorative and have some interplay and do something interesting. So that's kind of where we started there. And then I went ahead and drew up, I pulled some references and did several sketches to here and try to figure out, okay, where should these elements actually start to land? And how should they connect? And should they overlap? And where should they overlap? And how should they overlap? So that's what this step is kind of getting into that. And in each one of these, Vallie received another email saying, hey, here's where we are. Is this the right path? And sorry this is taking so long, but I want to make sure this is right, because an illustrative logo, if you give it all the way over to the illustrator, they might do something completely that you never even thought of in a good way. They might do something completely you never thought of in a bad way. And in this case, since she's already hired people in the past, I wanted to make sure that this path was correct for her and she felt good about it. And the nice thing about this sort of layout, I said, is that when the octopus isn't there, we have options. If we need smaller, then we can just drop the octopus out, and going from left to right here, we can just focus on type. We can focus on type and just a teacup, or we can focus on type, the teacup, and the plate. And yes, I know these are just images, and I'm not a big on an actual image and a logo, but it shows you how it could be a nice system that works across the different board. After this, I actually contacted an old friend of mine. She is a fabulous illustrator, an amazing illustrator that I met in high school. Her name is Terry Francic, and I said, hey, I would love you to take this logo to the next level, because I know she has a style that is just amazing. So she and I started working together, and we created this whole step-by-step process. And so I'm just going to walk you through kind of what she and I went back and forth and created. So this is just the rough sketches right off the bat to make sure she understands the feel of it. And then she drew the next stage, really mapping out where the plate's going to be and the cup, and kind of starting to really put in the tentacles and how they're grasping things and adding weight and mass to everything. And then she started playing with some of the texture, saying, if we go too far, it's going to be really hard to read. We're going to have to treat the type differently. How do we want to treat this? And then we started talking about the plate, saying, should the plate have a texture? Should the plate not have a texture? And so we created a whole series of little experiments to see, okay, how hard is it to read? What do we need to do? And then she said, Jeremy, I've got an idea. We need to have waves. These waves have to be on this plate. It totally goes with the story that you've written. And I said, you know what? I love the idea. It's kind of fun. It's going to be hard when it gets small, so we'll have to create some sort of workaround with that. But as an illustrative device to help tell the story of the brand, I love it. and then I'm going to share this next one because I think it's just I think it's so cute. She said, "Okay, so what if two of the tentacle arms were like a mustache?" And I said, "Yeah, okay, it's very steampunk. It's very interesting. Gosh, I love the way she handles texture and shape and form, and I think it's great." I said, maybe not for this one. Maybe we stick to the more traditional kraken and octopus for this one. So she demurred a bit and said, "Okay, fine, fine, fine." Um, and so we ended up with this guy, and she said, "Well, we have some options on arms and legs and how we want to hold the hat and how we want things to come together." And so this is what I love about this process: is it's the step by step. It's everything's growing, moving forward. Everybody is up to date and knows what's going on at every stage of it. And that's if you're going to do an illustrative logo, I feel like that is the way to do it. You can do modern logos, super simple. If you look at Aaron Draplin or Chris Doe or any of those guys, modern logos is pretty much just refine, refine, refine. Illustrative logos have to have personality. They have to have a sense of depth and of something going on and a reason for everything to make sense, right? So we chose B, and you can see this is that whole logo as it starts to come together with these etching kind of lines and really pulling in the style aspect that we were referencing from before, the English kind of tavern signs and just some really neat stuff kind of coming together. And then we started throwing in and pulling all the pieces together, and we get boom, Kraken's Cup. And this has got some gray going in. I said, I'm not so sure about the gray. The type gets really hard to read here. And she said, "Okay, well, but look at it in color, right? It totally looks good in color. Yes, looks great in color." And we actually she simplified the waves a bit so that it fit. She took some of those etching sort of things back in color a little bit so it fits. And she said, "All right, I think does this work? Does this look good?" And I said, "I think it works good for now." And do we have the Kraken? We do. Do we have the teacup? We do. Do we have the hat? We do. Do we have basically the colors? Yeah. But if you're a designer, or if you have worked in production or in marketing or anything else, you know that colors are a tricky thing, and that you have to get colors right to be reproducible on screen, in print, in every application you're doing it. So we actually had to take this and then recolor all the colors a little bit, and do little tweaks to make sure that they will be reproducible across the board. And that's how we got to, and the type. Ultimately, we decided the type really wasn't working. It's a little bit too noisy, right? It's hard to read. The legibility is kind of low, so we reworked the type a bit into something fun and unique, and this is how we got to here. So this is the Kraken's Cup logo. This is the final Kraken's Cup logo in black and white, up here, and pure blue and across the board. And again, the Kraken is definitely there. He's not the central figure, but he definitely paints an imposing picture over the whole thing, right? And it definitely adds some personality to it. But again, I wanted to make sure that this logo would work in different areas, in different sizes, in different ways, so it scales into what we've got here, which is just a cute little vertical Kraken's Cup with the wave pattern on it, a tentacle reaching around the plate, and it scales very well into different color sets. It simplifies quite easily for different applications, in hats and apparel and that sort of thing. And Vallie is just super enthused about it, and I'm super enthused about it because this has taken a little bit to kind of put together, because when you're doing an illustrative logo, it's a process. It's a slow process, and you have to get it right. You have to understand where you're going with it, and you have to get everybody on board. So what we took from here is here's a window sticker, one color window sticker with a white background on it. And then we kind of imagine, how would we do this if it were a billboard? What would we say? How would we approach that? And we took apart some of the tentacles, and we had some fun with it. We've got some of the Victorian patterns in the back. It's time for tea, right? How simple. It's just, it's time for tea. That's what it is. I love it. And because the Kraken, like I said, my concept is, if you're going to use the Kraken logo with the Kraken in there, then use that at the location. And everywhere else, if you use this, then it's the lead-in. And as they show up there, they'll recognize this piece of it, but then the Kraken is the character that adds extra. So when they sit down at the table, they'll see a table card. Again, we've got these nice patterns going on, and we've got a little bit of parchment paper effect going on, so it had some of that old-timey feel, right? And this gorgeous little logo on it. But then, Kraken's Cup, as well as a tea shop and as well as a little eclectic eatery, we want to make sure that they have packaging so they can do tea to go, or little snacks and treats to go, and things to take with them, or to go bags for lunch, right? And of course, if you're going to sell them these things separately as they come and go, you want to make sure you have beautiful bags to go with it, really high quality bags. Just really neat stuff here. And because I know that our target that we're aiming for is, that 50s woman who is, looking to network and looking for a team. So I know that she's not going to be into shirts and t-shirts and kind of fun stuff like that. But I think that a lot of people would be, and this is a big college town, and I know that they're going to get a lot of pull in through that. So why not go ahead and put some stuff out there that is just really fun, really unique, quirky with the character, showing it all off, really doing something interesting, and then to really up the ante, have something that wraps around and really does something just exciting and interesting, and maybe catches attention because people are like, wait, what is going on there? And if you're going to go that far, why not go for something for the phone, right? I don't even need to put the logo on here, because that tentacle and the pattern start to really reinforce the brand, start to really reinforce who you're talking about and what it's about, without being overtly selly or overtly obnoxious about it. It's just fun, and that's sort of the point here. And at the same time, we create a really neat looking brand guide that goes with everything, that is foil stamp and whatever they want it to be to tie it all together. Just something unique, right? That this place is already unique. It's fun, so let's go ahead and amp up the ante. And speaking of amping up the ante, the last one I want to show you guys is the Kraken's Cup car, because honestly, if we're going to use those tentacles, if we're going to have some fun with it, let's put them all over the place and really go wild, right? So this has been the Kraken's Cup. This is the entire development process we took from starting starting the strategic process and talking about all these things, and that's boring, so I'm not showing any of that, all the way through how we built it up, the kind of research we did, the sort of steps that we've taken all the way along, researching the competition, the mood boards, understanding the positioning, understanding who else is in areas doing this sort of thing, all to get to this point of a logo. And I really hope you guys have enjoyed this. It's been a labor of love working on this, but anything worthwhile is. And I know that Vallie is super happy with it. And if I can help you develop something like this, if I can help you develop your brand, if I can help you strategically think about your brand, I hope you consider reaching out to me, because I love this work and I'm super passionate about it. And I'm super grateful to be able to work on something like this that is so much fun and so entertaining. And I know it's going to make a huge difference in the world. And it will touch a lot of people. And I know that this sort of idea is going to appeal to a lot of people and help Vallie grow to that 3 locations fairly quickly. So thank you all so much for watching this, for listening to me. And I would love it if you enjoyed the content, please like it below, thumbs up. Please comment, tell me what you like about it, ask questions about my process if you're curious, and follow me, subscribe, find me everywhere, watch the videos, and by all means absorb whatever I'm putting out there. And if it can help you build your brand, focus on it, something you're doing more, then let me know and I will go ahead and build more content to help you guys out. So that's about it. Thank you so much and have a great day. Bye.